Hi, everyone. All right, I see Gabacha, I see Justine, I see Mike, and I do not see Steven, but I'm sure he'll be here in the next 30 seconds, as will Ali, as will a bunch of people, because this is so far our most registered for event yet, which is very fun. Because everybody wants to know how to not work for somebody else. Nobody wants a boss, and I get it. So we're just going to wait for the other two guests to come. Before we're doing that, we can hop in with an introduction. This is the Basecamp conversation for this week. Every week we do a new topic and explore ways for you to advance your career, whether you're a freelancer or a full-time worker. This one is specifically for freelancers. This format is actually called a Get Unstuck, and that means we're going to give you all an opportunity to ask questions about your own specific scenario. And we really do encourage you to speak up and ask those questions to our experts, because this is really an opportunity to get the ear of people that have traveled your path and have done so really successfully. So after we ask a couple of questions to start out, we're going to go to the audience, have you raise your hand. You can use a little raise your hand function in Zoom, or you can use the chat function and we will call you up to stage. But to start, if we can have our panelists introduce yourselves and just tell us very briefly who you are and why you're on stage, why we've invited you today, and you know what your connection to the freelance world is in the outdoor. So Gabacha, if you want to start.
Sure. Thanks, Jenna. I'm Gabachia. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I'm tuning in from the land of the Jicarilla, Pacha, and Pueblo peoples, also known as Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I mean, I've been invited here today because I think, Jenna, you just know that I have a ton of contracts with a ton of different people in multiple roles. And timely, I am quitting my day job for the second time in my life to be full-time freelancer. So I'm excited to just learn about everything that I've learned along the way. I've done this on and off for, oh gosh, more than 10 years. It's been a while. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Justine.
I'm always so late on the unmute button. I'm Justine Mollier, she, her pronouns. I am a certified professional coactive coach, and I work specifically with freelancers, creatives, small business owners to create a business and a life that honors what's most important to them. Before transitioning into coaching, I was a freelancer in the action sports industry for 7 years. So I made all the mistakes that I'm happy to share feedback from, and I'm just really excited to be here, answer questions, and also learn from everybody else's shared experiences.
Thank you. Steven.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hey, Justine. I am Stephen Martin, pronouns he, him, his. I am a full-time freelance photographer and videographer with a little bit of design on the side. But talking on the transition point, I started off as a 8-year U.S. Army veteran, been out for 9 years now, was on a path for exercise science, trying to get into nursing and a bunch of other stuff, and found freelance as a next path, and have since been doing it about 5-6 years now. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And just a quick note, Tanel was actually asked to help film her friend's engagement. So Stephen was very, very kindly able to come talk to us, which I think is exceptional because your clients are big time. So I think you're going to be able to teach everyone a lot today. And Mike, if you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm a copywriter, a fake writer, not a real writer. And I've been doing this for actually about 2 decades now. And I have clients I love, and I hope everybody gets clients they love. So I'm psyched to be here.
That's the goal, right? So let's hop in. Gabacha, you mentioned briefly you are actually transferring from a full-time gig into freelancing. So what were some of the things that you did to begin that process and to start landing those first clients? And what were like kind of the important things that you would have wanted to know going back to when you started for somebody else?
Okay, so I guess I guess the story even goes back to before I got this full-time job that I'm leaving, because I was a freelancer for full time for 3 years before I took on the full-time job. And really what it came down to was I I got tired of having to find the clients, right? And I thought, you know what, if I have a solid foundation, then I can actually take on only the clients that I really want and just pursue those projects. So this, I think I started working I'm currently, Monday's my last day, but I'm a project manager and business marketing consultant at a design agency. So I started with them in January of 2019, and it was perfect because, COVID happened, and I had like a safety net throughout that time, which was really cool. And so in that year, I was just pretty much focused on pursuing spaces where I could be in contact in the outdoor industry, where I could be in contact with the conservation world, these things that I'm just interested and passionate about, and trying to clean up my I guess client Rolodex of things that were no longer aligning with me, because I never really quit my clients when I started my full-time job. So I've really been working 2 full-time jobs, like full-time freelancing in multiple capacities with different people, and full-time working for the agency. So it finally just came to the point where I assessed where I was spending the most time making the least money, and that turned out to be my job. So boom, that was the easy metric. But also, like, having prospects of work that are more related to the things that I'm passionate about, which are, outdoors, conservation, equity, and all that stuff.
Can you just elaborate? You said that you spent some time in the spaces where your clients would be, and what do you mean by that? Like, what did those spaces look like? Were they physical, digital? What were you doing?
They were digital, and they've been digital because even when I was freelancing full time before, I was living nomadically. So I was living in my truck and maybe like stayed 6 months in one place at most. But those couple of years, I was just really traveling full time. So it was really all digital. It was all Facebook groups. It was all Instagram conversations, believe it or not. And then events like Green Latinos events, and just like affinity group events where I was really in the communities where I want to grow professionally. So, it was attending networking events, kind of like this, attending talks, webinars, but always with the intention of making relationships and seeing, not just for my own benefit though, but like finding genuine curiosity for what other people are working on. And you find those connections with your passions, with your interests. And I also did a couple of volunteer things for folks, and those things have also turned into contracts over time.
Thank you so much. Justine, can you tell us, sorry, I forgot my question for you. Hold on. Okay. When you're pitching to people, how do you find out who to pitch to? Like, how do you find the person? And then, like, when you're pitching, what should that look and feel like, right? And is there anything specific for the outdoor industry that might be different from a different industry?
Well, actually, that's what I loved about what Gabachia was saying, was the right person is the person that you know. The right person is the relationship that you've already created, the trust that you've already built, the reputation that you've cultivated for yourself. So it's really about like cultivating the relationships that you have and following that curiosity and seeing what that can lead to. I think being of service and showing up with the desire to genuinely make it a reciprocity relationship where you can serve them and they can serve you is really important. And then in terms of like who to pitch to, and how, and like, how do you present yourself? I think we totally undervalue who we are as people when we start these conversations. You know, we live in an industry where there's so many photographers, videographers, designers. Like, if we just look at the amount of people in this industry, it's easy to get defeated. But you are your own asset, who you are, your experience, what you bring to the table, your values, your own flavor. I think we really underestimate how important it is to show up as a full person beyond just our skill set. So I think it's really important to highlight our mastery of our craft. So yes, I'm a talented photographer. Yes, I'm a skilled writer. And I'm not just giving you a photo or writing, I'm giving you reliability. I'm giving you relief. I'm giving you value. I'm giving you an understanding of your brand. So for me, it's really about pitching how you're going to serve them as opposed to just the ways in which you do that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here too. I've done little bouts of freelance here and there, but I think that was great, Justine, because I know also having worked as an editor on the other side of it, that having a freelancer who is on time and delivers work that is, you know, pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfect. There is like that symbiotic relationship between editor and writer that makes it what it ends up being. But yeah, that's such a great point. So thank you for that. Mike, we would love to ask you, you've been doing this for 2 decades. How do you get your services in front of clients? And maybe you do that digitally, maybe you do that physically when we actually have physical events. Goldie would like to know.
All right, Goldie, pay attention. You know, I don't think I have to be here anymore because of what Justine just said. I thought about this when you guys asked me to do this, and I think one of the advantages I thought of was be old. And that's how you make, you know, that gives you the time to make connections. And then I was just writing down, you know, notes, find kindred spirits, find allies, find brands and people that you align with. And for me, presenting myself at usually say OR personally, you know, I'm well-spoken and clean cut and engaging, and I love meeting people. And I think that reflects, and you're going to go through and there's going to be a lot of people who don't want to meet you, don't want to see you, don't need to see you, don't waste people's time. I make it very clear to people that, you know, this is going to be a hit and run. And I find names via LinkedIn, but really I just make a plan at a trade show, walk around, look for people, follow up the next day, you know, I make a little hit list, and offer them something that will make their life better, and offer them someone who they want to work with, and who is generally already engaged with them and their brand.
That's great. Absolutely. Yeah, that in-person impression makes a big difference. You can really forge some real relationships, and hopefully we'll be back at that place soon enough. It's been hard, I'm sure, for all the freelancers this last year.
It's scary.
Yeah, definitely. So the next question is for Stephen. Stephen, how have you used your past experiences to sell yourself in the outdoor industry and to stand out?
Yeah, awesome question. So I rely a lot and am proud of my military service and the time that I spent in the Army. And, you know, I lean back on a lot of my personal core values instilled in that time, the same way that I work with clients, to the way I show up on set, the way that I am from start to finish, from consultations to delivery to just the overall image and package that you as a freelancer still have to instill in yourself, to have brands be comfortable working with you. You know, you're not just always as a freelancer using a brand's mission statement or a motto as something that you want to work with them, but they also are taking the risk of working with you as a creative individual based on your own personal life or the way that you are as well. So having your own core values and those being an important part of the way you move forward within the freelance industry helps you lean back on really just who you are as yourself. You're not really having to recreate and change the freelance person apart from who you individually are. And that creates that creates that authenticity when trying to stand out against everybody else that in the sea of Instagram and photographers, and quite a lot out there right now. And I use a lot of those experiences, both. Like I was doing a set recently where we were filming people doing different fitness things and yoga, and I had my degrees in exercise science, and I leaned on, I was already fast forward to this product being on Facebook and somebody being like, that person's form isn't right. and was like leaning on my exercise science degree, like watching everybody's fitness thing as a director to be like, yeah, you need to elbows in, move, do all this. And there's always every little bit of some past experience or some, prior job that moving into the freelance world that can still hold a lot of value to what you're going to be doing as a creator, a writer, or anything like that. So you're not always having to reinvent the new and just kind of give up on who you were before, but try to find a way to carry that through as you kind of start a new chapter.
Yeah. Do you put that sort of thing in your portfolio as well? Or is that something that's more in the relationship building portion that you would build connections with, using those values and those experiences?
I think just initially, I'm very forward as being a veteran and that being a part of like companies that I look for, or I am often approached by organizations that say like, thank you for your service or things like that. So it's an important tagline for me. I guess it's not my first go-to thing when with a client, like, this is who I am, and if it's not important to you, we're not going to work together or something like that.
Got it. Okay. So perfect. We've all gotten a little bit of an appetizer of what our panelists are all about and what they can speak to. So if anybody has personalized questions, please raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you. If not, I have more questions and Allie has more questions as usual. So we can hop into those as well. Justine, I'd like to just start with this one to you. Let's say you are reaching out to people and they're just not answering your emails. What do you do in that case?
Yeah, I think obviously it's important to follow email etiquette. Like if you reach out once, I would say don't let your imposter syndrome or your inner critics dominate that conversation. Like how many of us have inboxes with over 500 messages there? So it's easy to assume that like, oh my God, this person has so much influence over my future and like they're ignoring me and they hate me and I shouldn't be in this work anymore. Or they're just really busy and may have overlooked that. So I would always encourage like a second outreach. A lot of people, that I've reached out to a second time are so grateful. They're like, yes, thank you for bringing this back into my sphere. This is exactly what I need. Like, cool, thank you so much. I would say if you reach out and then you reach out a second time and you still aren't hearing back, maybe let them know that you're going to stop contacting them and that you're always, willing to chat if they circle back to your email. My first thing is really just don't make up stories. Do not make up assumptions that your inner critics dominate the conversation and like let it be this like huge source of failure. It takes a lot of courage to do what we do. So just like be proud of the fact that you even have that in your lead generator Excel file where you're tracking the amount of people that you're reaching out to. And then I would say keep getting creative. Like, again, who do you know? I find that a lot of freelancers are so excited to cold email instead of telling their current network that they're looking for clients, which is so, baffling because it's the people that are closest to you that want to help you most. So help people help you. Let people that are close to you, let past clients, let current clients know that you're looking for clients. So I would say don't make assumptions, keep reaching out, and then really start looking at underutilized people in your network that you can optimize.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have a really good question that came through the chat. And essentially it is, so how much time should you balance in while you're marketing your services, trying to target your ideal client, or being open to sort of whoever might like your services? So how often are you like, here's my ideal client, I am on the hunt for you, versus like, okay, but I'm also open, and it's a little more, you know, maybe you will take that client. Maybe it isn't, maybe it's more of a famine than a feast that month. You know what I mean? Is that what it depends on, is how much money you're making, or are there other factors? And that's for anyone that would like to answer.
Okay, I'll chime in. You know, chasing the great white whale is exciting, but you got to eat. One thing I would do is, if you are chasing that whale, and, you know, depending on what your discipline is, look at their materials. Like if I go to a website and the copywriting's really good, I move on. They've got it nailed. You know, find some great white dolphins, you know, some tuna fish, some minnows, and let them fill in the crack, and let them keep you working and keep you inspired and keep you having momentum and building your network. I do look for brands that I align with and that I feel comfortable promoting to promote my brand. But, you know, sometimes you get these kind of funky old shoes, and, you know, they pay you, and that's great. And you don't have to promote that you worked for them. But no matter who you work for, you're going to learn something. I worked for a mortgage technology company for years, and I learned a lot, and they were good people, and it was fun. So white whales are great, but sardines, you know, fill your belly.
Gabacha, should you take free work as a freelancer to build your portfolio?
It depends on where you're at in your career. And I'm never completely against pro bono work, because sometimes something comes around, and if you have the time, you feel passionate about it, and you know the people that are behind it, and it's for a good cause, that's great. If you are with the great white, like Mike was talking about, and they are doing that, that's exploitation. So you have to kind of, and this is something that it took me a long time to learn, and also taking responsibility for that as a, you know, woman of color is kind of like a big deal, because I realized that, you know, every time that I have in my life given my time for free to somebody that should have paid me, or could have paid me, but decided not to for what reasons were that way, I'm not only doing a disservice to myself, but I'm doing a disservice to my entire community. And so you have to wade in like the ethics behind it. On top of that, you know, there are great projects that unfortunately don't have a budget, and sometimes you can brainstorm ways to find that budget for the people that are trying to work with you. And I have done that in the past, I guess semi-successfully, where, you know, like found some funding for a project that originally didn't have any, because sometimes the the people that are in the job, they're not aware of other ways that they can fundraise, and you can just plant those seeds and give them the ideas if they don't have them. So, you know, yes, but depends.
Okay.
Can I just add something really quick to that?
Yeah, please.
Someone who's a friend and mentor of mine years ago said, free work begets free work.
Oh.
If you set your value that low, you've set your value that low. volunteering is different than work. And yeah, it can be exploitation if your value, if your worth is not being met. And it doesn't grow you in the financial professional way. Same thing with working for gear. It's a slippery slope. So
I'm gonna agree with Mike, and I want to add something else, which is, that it's our responsibility to make sure, because obviously the hiring managers or the marketers that are putting together these gear exchange programs, like all these different things, they are in the position of power. They're getting paid to reach out to you. And this is kind of how the industry has worked for so long. It doesn't mean that it should continue to work this way. And the more that we can bring it up to them, whenever we are reached out with those opportunities to say, you know what, I am not, like, this is something I literally copy paste on those kinds of emails where I'm like, I'm currently not doing any exchange partnerships or unpaid work in respect to my community and the wage gaps that exist for women and communities of color, period. Like, calling it out exactly what it is not only helping you in this relationship building, but like, again, it ripples effects into the community. And like, going back to what Mike said, like, free work gets free work. Word gets out that you work for free, you're probably going to get a lot of opportunities to work for free, right? So I think it's good to make those distinctions between what will be volunteering versus actually working and being of a lot of service to advance someone.
If I can also add something to that,
Please do, yeah.
With each client we say yes to, we're potentially saying no to another client. So it's something that we need to factor in, which is that every yes also has a cost. It costs energy and time and money potentially to say yes to this client. So I think it's really important also to not just let the famine dictate what's on our buffet table, and also just really factor in like, okay, I could do this work for this amount of money, or I could spend the same amount of time looking for new clients, putting myself out there, cultivating relationships that might ultimately pay me more, or do professional development. I think it's really easy for us freelancers to think that like, oh, we don't necessarily have to take ourselves seriously because we're freelancers, but you're a business, you're a professional. And as such, if you're running a big corporation, you wouldn't be handing out your products for free. So why are you handing your services for free? So you can tell this is something that gets me pretty riled up. Yeah.
David has a question and he's gonna pop his face up. He's ready.
As soon as I figure it out. There we are. So I think Justine basically just stole the question away from me, which this is a question for the panelist and also for anybody else to ponder. So I have been freelancing for 8 years and full-time for 6 years now. And yeah, when I first started, it was kind of like this new wave of freelancers coming into the outdoor industry. And I could see a whole bunch of my peers doing it. And they were just, I'm a freelancer. Oh, I've got a gig here. I've got a gig there. I can't find a gig. And there was no system or sense of being a business. Whereas I approached it, I had 9 years of corporate experience already at that time. And I was like, I'm just a freelancer, but this is my business. This is how I'm going to make my living. I have to somehow replace my income as an engineer by freelancing. So like, I came up with systems, I came up with automations, I came up with all of this stuff to really treat my new profession as a profession. So if any of you want to talk to things that you have done, or like I said, anybody else to ponder that as they are just freelancing.
Yeah, Stephen, I was going to call on you if you didn't raise your hand, because I think that you do a really good job of this.
Yeah, one real thing, and I actually talked about this a lot in Justine's course that we took earlier last year during the pandemic, which was great. But as a photographer, freelancer, you look to mentors and people that have kind of paved the way before you, and you're looking to individuals that like you've said, set up those systems. A lot of people have those systems already created, and in the right capacity, they're not coveting and holding their stuff, to not share and be able to, teach people how to a pricing list on how to price out a client package, or just like what the invoice is supposed to look like when you send that to a client. And those things are, you can spend hours and hours on Google just searching for documents and finding all that stuff. But finding a mentor in your own community is they're potentially gonna have that, somebody that's been in the business for a while. And I've shared my invoice setups, I've shared my pricing sheets with people, and there's no competition way to hold sacred the process that I've set up, just if it's going to help somebody else, especially somebody just getting into freelancing.
Justine, do you want to expand on that one? You're nodding vigorously.
Yeah, I mean, as Stephen pointed out, like what I really appreciate about so many folks in this industry is the willingness to be transparent, whether that's about rates or systems or operations. And part of what I was nodding is Stephen's professionalism is from the get-go. It's from answering emails on time, and everyone else's professionalism too. It's answering emails on time, bringing the client through your own process, as opposed to being like, hey, you can lead. Like, hey, my client, you can take the lead. No, they're hiring you because you're an expert. They want you to guide them through the process. So I was really nodding about the coherence of, are you a professional? Then the process of that you bring your client on should be professional. I'm not asking for crazy websites, but like you should be communicating coherently about the value that you're bringing to this client. And if you can do that, then they trust you. They feel safe with you. They're ready to pay you to take whatever mission off of their hands that they're hiring you to do. So I particularly appreciate that question, David, because I think that's spot on. We have to lead our clients through our processes so that they feel like they're in the right hands, basically.
Yeah, it is a business. And I mean, as such, a question comes up for me. Is there an area that freelancers should be investing in? So for, maybe a startup business, someone would say, well, you should get an accountant and a lawyer. You should, get a marketing person. You should get an IT person. Are there any areas where investing money might be a really great thing for a freelancer? Because, you can't know everything all the time. You can't be an expert in everything, as hard as we try.
I can speak to that a little bit. I think the best investment that I've ever done is in an assistant. Just to do, I mean, honestly, it's like, it just creates so much more time for you to do the things that you really want to do. And it can be really daunting. It can be painful at the beginning because you have to like train them and like build a trust and make sure that you can actually let this person take on some responsibilities that, especially as a freelancer, you are on your own for so long. You're building your processes, you're building your system and the ways in which you like to deliver your products and everything, or your services. But just having that person that can help you out when you are too busy to put together something, or even like answering an email or reaching out to a client that just needs like poking to get content to you or whatever that is, it's super, super valuable. So that's the first one. And I've had assistants on and on in different capacities throughout the years. And the second one is investing in a CRM that does what you need it to do. So CRM is a client relationship management software that you subscribe to, and depending on which one you choose, they have different capacities and things that they can do for you. I personally am using Dubsado, and I can drop a link later, but I've been using it for like 2.5 years. It houses all my contract templates, I can set up automatic recurring payments with my clients. It automatically sends payment reminders. So I never, because money is so weird, sending people like reminders that they haven't paid you for a month or whatever it is, super super difficult to do, right? So, I mean, just having that automated takes the guessing out of that. I just get the like, oh, I'm so sorry emails that I haven't paid you yet. And I'm like, I didn't even know, like I haven't even realized. Granted, in the privileged position of like, I don't have to know that I'm getting paid on time, but it was not always that way, right? Like there were times where like I really had to be like, oh no, you need to pay me right now. But so those two things like help in, and it can be an assistant, or it can be going on Fiverr for like a quick someone to make you a flyer or whatever that is. But yeah, an assistant and a CRM, I would say those are big, good investments. Definitely the CRM to begin with. I highly recommend that.
I was gonna, in my realm, just kind of an add-on to that assistant idea, but it's also, if I'm taking on a project with a client and it has video, interviews, photos, and it's a large package deal, hiring other creatives and paying them to do what you could do yourself, but you're taking that load off of yourself, so that if I'm, a photo and video project, sure, I could do them both, but just to run through a full day of that or 2 or 3 days in a row becomes a lot. And hiring, not just your buddies and just different people, even though you may have really close friends, but, looking at, I think I was just looking here, Sarah in the chat just said something about, I've been an assistant to a mentor for a long time, and it's helped open up doors for it. And that's, I was my mentor, a guy named Brian, that I went around and followed him a bunch and did some assistant projects with him. I now hired him as my videographer for large scale projects. And we're on more of a level playing field, even though I still look to him for advice and things throughout my freelance career. But, like she was saying, if you have the capacity and the client's paying, and as they should, find ways to take some load off of what you have to do, so that it really opens up your creative ability to focus on the 1 or 2 things that you're really responsible for.
I also want to add the unsexy ones, such as a lawyer and an accountant. Working with freelancers and creatives, the murky areas that intimidate the crap out of us and that we want to avoid at all costs are the legal aspects, so contracts, agreements, not getting ourselves kind of screwed over by clients potentially if things go wrong, and then also the accounting piece. Ooh, the money. We are so scared of talking about money, and a lot of us are so confused, and how much do you put aside for taxes, and what does healthcare look like? So for me as a coach, one of the first things I love to encourage people to do is clarify the pieces that feel ambiguous. And a lot of the time, a meeting with a lawyer and a meeting with an accountant is really helpful for that. I would also encourage you to invest in gear. Are you a photographer? Do you need to upgrade your camera? Like, for me, simply investing in yourself means that you're committing to this next phase. So I don't take that lightly. Don't like cheapskate your way through this, because you're worth investing in. And sometimes you have to make money. You have to, spend money to make money. And then the last piece I'll say is investing in your community, investing, whether that's in time, like here, showing up in these capacities, but like find a community and invest in a community that supports you in your freelance or small business realm. We all need the opposite of our inner critics. We need cheerleaders. So for me, those are like the accountant, lawyer, equipment, and then the community piece to make sure that like you're getting help in building that momentum.
And I just want to say real quick, what this is spitting off of Justine, the community thing. I would say the best investment I made in my business was joining a co-working space that's also does business education. And that put me in contact. If nothing else, you're sitting next to somebody who's also working, so that it motivates you to work. I don't, it shames you into it if nothing else, but it gave me access to an attorney. It gave me access to accounting. It gave me access to classes. And it gave me a place to go to work, which for me is a big deal.
And there are outdoor industry folks in particular that you can lean on for those services. Like, for instance, I know that there's a couple, Dylan and Rebecca, and they help folks with finances. And I know this because they are up on LinkedIn every day giving helpful tips and putting themselves out there. So that's another point in itself, is if you're providing value on whatever, you know, channel that you choose, people are going to take notice. And then all of a sudden you can say, oh yeah, by the way, here's what I do. Because when people are super valuable to me, I pay attention and I want to know more about them. So I organically go to their LinkedIn profile. I organically click on that link and say, well, wait, what are you up to right now? So it's really great to just say sometimes, by the way, I have these services, but another way to do that, maybe a little more clever, just to kind of get people's affinity toward you, is to put out content that is going to get their attention and provides them a little bit of upfront value, a little bit of, you know, a couple value snacks, if you will. So I always recommend that too. We would love to see more faces on screen, by the way, too. Also, pro tip, a lot of people are going to watch this recording after the fact. So it is your opportunity to kind of come up on stage, let people know what you do. And it's an advertisement for your services. So if you have a question or a comment and you want to come up to the video, please do. Until then, I would love to know about your portfolios. Are there any tips and tricks for how you are presenting yourselves online when you're not actually in conversation with people?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit on that, since obviously photography and video is all portfolio, pretty heavy on that scape. I come at it both two different ways. I have a sizable Instagram following, and I have found clients and opportunity through that way. But I also have found, even for myself when I was first starting out, that it was very limiting to actually showcasing what you're capable of. You find that, a solid portfolio, if you're getting hired to shoot a 50 to 100 photo project for a client, is a lot more than just that one photo on social media that looks really great. And that only gets you so far, and really doesn't show a client or anybody the sizable depth and variety that you're capable of, and being able to, my dog's crying over there, being able to stand out that way, because Instagram is a great way to get in front of brands. But how many people are tagging their tent that they camped in on the weekend, hoping that REI shares their photo? Or, there's a process that works, and 9 times out of 10, it's not going to happen. And so your own portfolio is really who you are, your own brand, your own, your design, your logos, all these different things. And as if a client comes to that page and sees this well thought out process, your own style, they're able to look into the future of their content that they're wanting and already see it happen, already see the process. As opposed to, there always being this uncertainty about the whole process of them hiring you and if it's actually going to pan out. And a lot of that as well in my portfolio is that I have a style, and I've got a way in my photos and the way my video is, but I'm not locked into that when working with a client. I'm not gonna, the client can hire me. There are a lot of big creatives that you're being hired to shoot your style for them, but don't lock yourself into your style being the only thing, because that's not a blanket for every brand and business out there. So, I think for me specifically, variety is one of the biggest things on my portfolio to show just that I'm capable of doing a lot more than just dog photos, which is, yeah.
I would love to hear if any of you have memorable, either a first freelance gig that's memorable in how you got it, or maybe just one that you're really proud of, like a big freelance gig, and how it came about, because I think there are probably some lessons that we can take away from those types of stories. And I'll just start for me personally, I found that actually being in-house, for a few years at a magazine was really the most valuable thing to being able to be a freelancer. elsewhere, so I could learn what it is that, magazines are looking for, how the pitch process works, which pitches are going through, and then kind of just utilize that same system to pitch other magazines elsewhere. And so, and then also that magazine that I worked at, Outside Magazine, became, I guess, a big client. I didn't even, of mine as a freelance writer after I left there. So I think that can, like you said, Justine, holding your closest relationships as your most valuable ones is incredibly pertinent. So yeah, I'd love to hear other people's stories about their first or big freelance clients.
All right, I'll do my white whale story. Arc'teryx has been a client of mine for about 9 years. And I got that, by the way, being in-house is huge. But for anybody who's like, oh, how do I reach out for people? Snooze, which is now Outside Business Journal. If you were a subscriber, you got to write press releases. So when I had downtime, I'd write these press releases. Copywriter gets writer's block, walks up street to get M&Ms. And I'd post the releases. And there was a guy up in Vancouver who thought they were hilarious. And he hired me at Innate Designs. And he kept telling me I should write for Arc'teryx, I should write for Arc'teryx. And I'd go to the trade show and I'd be like, introduce me to Arc'teryx. And finally he did. Their creative director basically hired me on the spot because I was the guy who wrote the funny press releases. Paths are never conventional, especially when they lead to success. So I would just suggest, this is getting back to that being yourself. Find that different path every day and go ahead and jump on it, because it could go somewhere, and if it doesn't, it's still a good view. So that's my weird path to my big client.
I think the takeaway there, though, is that you were a squeaky wheel. You continually sort of were persistent about, wanting to be introduced. And I think that persistence is something that serves us really well.
And I had a relationship with this brand and this guy, Greg, that was, I don't want to say intimate, but was sincere and fun and engaged. And, that's going to motivate him to pass me along. So again, it's the network, and it's your kindred spirits, or who's going to help you.
Mm-hmm. So Margo, you had a question as well that I think sort of plays into that really well.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Margo Stoney. I'm a graphic designer. My company is called High Mountain Creative. Hello, Justine. I have worked with Justine and she's amazing. Kind of talking about portfolios and such, I found a lot of value in having a pitch deck, which is kind of something that when somebody reaches out to me who maybe has been to my website and wants to learn more, or somebody who's been referred to me and wants to know more. So I'd love to hear anybody's perspective about pitch decks and maybe what to include in there that might set you apart from other, other freelancers or other, people who are applying for a similar gig. So yeah, anything about pitch decks, I'd love to start the conversation.
I haven't done many of them. I did just kind of one recently as like a trial myself. But I found a fun way to do it was I looked at like the upcoming, so I was pitching it more as like an influencer style. But I kind of looked at it as like a season. I was like, what am I doing the next 4 or 5 months? And I'm going to pitch it as like, this is my like my little bracket. And these are the places I expect to go. And these are the things I expect to do. Do you want to be involved in it? Like I kind of had this, like my pitch was almost trying to invite somebody into work alongside the plans that I already had. And if it worked for them, it did. If not, it was fine. This was a lot of just like getting brand materials and contents just to go along organically with my trips. But, you know, not being locked into like this one pitch deck is everything about me, bunch of information. I send it out and not, you know, like being able to flow and change it. Okay, I just did those 5 things. I went on this trip, I did this, and then now I'm going to change the pitch deck and completely, you know, revamp what I'm pitching out to people. If that makes any sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's cool to be able to have kind of that flexibility in it. And yeah, like maybe the about me stays the same, and then based on what projects you're pitching, or like you said, your availability, that's really neat to be able to kind of say, just put yourself out there and say, this is where I'm going to be. Do you want in on this?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, a pitch deck, so a pitch deck is a whole nother piece of your portfolio, and it's an extension of what you're putting online. And so that goes into the question that, oh gosh, I just lost it. Like how are you creating these assets? Like what if you're not a web designer? Where do you go and what do you do? Because not everybody knows how to do that. So are there any maybe out of the box solutions? Is this something that you should be paying for somebody to do? Any suggestions there?
Oh, Gabatia, go for it.
No, you go for it.
I think it depends what state your business is in or what phase of business you're in. I think it's totally appropriate to use Canva as a basis, or InDesign if you already know the Adobe suite. And then also depending on the, you know, if you're at the maintenance level of your business and you're just simply trying to like continue professionalizing yourself, I think definitely hire a designer. Like getting someone else's eye on what makes you unique and what your positioning is and how to translate that essence to potential clients, I think can be incredibly valuable.
I will also add to that, get a peer to review it, right? Like again, like the freelancer life can be so isolating, but I cannot tell you how many times I've had friends texting me like, I hate running my own business. I can't do this. I'm like, book a call with me. I'll tell you everything I know. When have they booked the call? Never. They stay isolated. Don't do that. Reach out to your community. Reach out to a friend. Post it on the Basecamp Facebook group. There's so many helpful threads. Like, I'm sure you're going to find someone who can take a look, and you know, whatever they have to say about it, you can take it or leave it, but at least you got an external objective eye on what you just created or on what someone else created for you.
So just quickly, if everyone on the panel, before we go to the next question, if you want to give me like a thumbs up or a thumbs down, do you need a specific, like a professional looking email, or can you do like name@gmail? So specific company branded email, yes or no? Okay. Website, social media pages. Okay, so that's good to know that social can be like a yes or a no. Probably I would input if you're willing to update them, and if you're going to make the commitment to be there, and if somebody does want to DM you on a channel that you've set up, you are going to be there to answer that DM, because it's not a good look if you're ignoring calls and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty good insight. Gosh, the questions keep going down and down. Okay. So Sarah's question is pretty cool. How do you score base clients? So I don't know what that means. Does anyone know that mean? Justine, does that verbiage resonate with you? Score base clients?
I think retainer clients.
Oh, okay. So she would like to have more base clients, so she's not pitching. I see. So you recurring clients. Okay. So how do you get people that are basically long-term?
I mean, I would first say, well, actually, to be honest, 30% of your story is getting accepted, like high five on that. I think that's a pretty great average to start with.
Good to know.
And my encouragement would be, how can you co-create a relationship with these clients for it to be consistent? Do you know what they need? Do they need something consistent? Is that something that you can help provide for them? Like, I think if you have a good understanding of what your clients are actually looking for, maybe there is the potential to turn them into recurring clients, or clients that keep you like, so that you have your kind of solid base of the pyramid. And I think asking for that feedback, are you showing up as a pro? Are you reliable? Can they count on you? Is there trust there? I think we underestimate, like, I know personally when I was freelancing, I was so focused on the next client that sometimes my work would kind of like not be expert level, to the point where I was so focused on the next thing, I wasn't here. So if you're here, how can you build on the trust that you've already cultivated here, and then potentially think about the other stuff? I don't know if that answered that question.
I think I was going to say in there as well with that, you know, I have a few retaining photography clients, but there's also the point of if the market or the type of client is even somebody that needs consistent content. So if your whole focus is the white whale, or just, you know, trying to get after this one, you know, you're a mountain bike photographer and you just want to do mountain bikes. Well, if this company only releases a bike once a year, that's, you know, there's not really anything retaining about that consistency. So opening yourself up to maybe a different market or a different thing within your community that has more necessity for consistency can help increase that percentage of retaining clients.
Yeah, and I would just say, by the way, the seasonal thing is really important. If you work for a ski brand, you better have a bike brand. You know, you know, don't set yourself up for feast and feast. And I would just say for retaining, I love my clients, and I tell them that. And I try to be a good teammate and a collaborator. And I have found that being seen as a face, which is actually easier now because we do things like this and Microsoft Teams, is really kind of, it's indispensable. You know, there are people at Arc'teryx that I've never ever met in person, most of the people I work with. But you know, today we were having a meeting and one of them was making bread, and, you know, it was pretty kumbaya. So be a face, be a connected, be a teammate, and then do good work and deliver. You know, don't let them down. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I would say reliability is one of the biggest things that I look for when I want to hire somebody. If I know you're going to do what you say you're going to do, I'm going to hire you again. Graham had a really good question, and he's going to come on up and ask that one.
Yeah, thanks. Mine's sort of tied into the retainer and base side. I work with clients both on a project and on retained services for marketing consulting. And I find myself, I'm in the position, I'm sure a number of you have, of trying to evolve my model a bit more to be able to scale things out. I'm one person operating, and I'm trying to make it not be completely linear, where every additional dollar means additional hour or 10 hours worth of work that I can't take on. So I guess it's kind of two-part. One, any stories or insights on how you have made it easier to figure out kind of time capacity to improve your accuracy over time when thinking about projects or retained work. I tend to be pretty good at doing that myself for projects, but not necessarily so much when a client just says, hey, you're on retainer, I need this, I need this, I need this. And two, just kind of your own, you know, I'd love to hear stories of how you refined your own model over time and lessons you learned and getting to that like sweet, effective spot for what was really productive for your business.
So I can speak to that a little bit. Definitely automations are key. Like I mentioned, I use a CRM, and that, I mean, once I started using it, it was a curve to set it up, but I knew that once that was ready, I mean, like I said, there's just so many things that run by themselves in my business that I don't even know about. The second part was also hiring help, like I mentioned, but also I always try to think about my client journey. And I talk to my clients a little customer journey, but I do think about my client journey. And this kind of ties a little bit into the previous question too about retaining clients, because from the beginning, when I am pitching them for the project that they want me to quote, I add retainer options. So they know that this is not only what I do, the one-off project, but that afterwards, there are other ways that we can collaborate. So they already know from the beginning that they can become a retainer client. And that takes also the strategy of your pricing, because retainer prices could be a little more exciting to someone that's trying to contract you, right? So I actually had this in the very early stages of my more intentional freelancing career. I had pitched, or somebody asked me to pitch them a web design project, but I also knew that they were interested in social media help. So what I did is I said, hey, I can build you a website for this much money, or we can go into a 1-year contract, and this is how much you're going to pay me every month, and I'm going to be simultaneously building your website and your social media. And I had that client for 3 years until that, I don't know, the owners got into a fight or something. But, like that, and I mean, at that point, like I was really young, I didn't know what I was doing, but that move I think was super smart. And I learned from that. So I carried on. And that's why every time I present, like, this is the big pitch for what you want, and here's a menu of other things that we can also do together. And if we work together regularly, such a better deal for you, right? So kind of building that client journey and attaching some excitement and I guess like economic or financial psychology to it could be really helpful.
Brooke had a cool question as well that she's willing to come on up and ask us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for all that you've been sharing. It's great. I'm a freelance writer, videographer, and photographer, and I kind of just like jumped into it somewhat. And I just was wondering if you guys could provide some insight on how you deal with the ongoing or have navigated the ongoing cycles, which I feel like is probably more intense in the beginning, but cycles of feast and famine with just like contracts and building client and that kind of stuff.
I've been doing this for 20 years and it's always feast or famine. So be ready for famine, squirrel away, put some nuts in the oak tree. The work all comes at once, it rains, it pours, all those cliches are cliches for a reason. So, but if you do set yourself up on retainer, that definitely spreads the feast out. So if you can make that happen, that's a great thing to make happen. But it never gets perfect.
I would also love to add, like, especially in the famine part, not only be financially secure, but how are you investing in your business in that time? It's a great time for business development, for relationship building, for upping your game in your skill set, for so it's really also, how do we use that time to be constructive? Not so that it's something that we're so terrified of engaging with, but rather something that we're like, okay, cool, this is when I rest, this is my cycle, and this is when I'm going to start resting, or this is when I start cultivating something else. What I did, so I was a freelance events producer and media manager on the big action sports events in Europe for 7 years, and I was seasonal. So again, also, are you working in cycles? So my winters, I was super busy. And in the summertime, I also started looking at what are extensions of the work that I do that I can utilize my network for. I'm bilingual, I'm French and American. I started doing translation work for ski and snowboard magazines, then tourism magazines. So what I like to kind of talk about in terms of the client mix is, okay, this is your peak, these are your whales, this is the work you like to do, this is the work that you're confident in doing. What is the layer underneath it that can help sustain that? And what is the layer underneath it that can sustain that? So while I wouldn't encourage folks to default straight to like the thing that they have no interest in just because it's there, it's also about like being really smart about, okay, in my famine period, what can I bring to the table that helps sustain me in addition to developing myself in what I want up here to kind of like feed into that. So just don't panic. Just be really thoughtful about, okay, how do I make use of this? And what are my options instead of, I'm gonna not eat tomorrow.
Yeah, on the photo side, the same thing is, I was the photographer that said I would never shoot a wedding, and I eventually shot a lot of weddings, and they're pretty fun. And that's not going to be my goal, and that's I'm not trying to get on the cover of Bride magazine or something like that, but what I've taken from shooting more portraits and people at weddings has vastly paid off when shooting a runner or a skier or anything like that. The same as shooting, if you're an action sports photographer, or you're doing video with that as well, like do some food on the side, find restaurants. Right now restaurants are all reopening and there's a lot of opportunity, and there's COVID it took away opportunities, but it obviously rose other ones up. And if you were able to kind of capitalize on that in certain ways, it just makes your stuff better. So.
As Emily just said, it's been very insightful. I'm just gonna go ahead and put everyone on the panel on the spot. If you wouldn't mind a closing statement, like maybe something that we didn't get to, or something that you'd like to impart to your peers about being a freelancer. Stephen, since you're kind of on the screen, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. I can speak to this because I just came off of a 19-day road trip yesterday, which was great. I had a project in Tahoe, and I turned a one-day project into a 19-day road trip. But I don't do that often, as much even in just my local area as I should. And so finding that work-life balance, putting the camera down, finding a way to do the creative piece of what you love to do without all of the job mentality. And you'll come back to your client or anything like that with the fresh eyes, and just be better off for both your mental ideal and yourself. So yeah, it was, but now I'm back in reality, and it sucks, and I want to go back on the road. So there, you kind of deal with the vacation hangover a bit.
Justine, do you have a little wisdom tip?
I would say feed all the parts of yourself. So feed the creative, nourish the creative, take the time off, use the free of the freelance, like actually give yourself permission to have the freedom. And then also feed the professional. Like, if you're a client of mine, you know that I'm always talking about kind of compartmentalizing these for a little bit, but like, feed the professional, invest in the professional, invest the time, the energy into that professional part of you, invest in the accountant part of you. Like, you are a full-fledged business. So if it helps, think of yourself as like different entities. And has the accountant showed up this week? No? Well, then maybe you should look at your expenses. Has the creative showed up this week? No? Then like maybe spend some time cultivating fun things to do. Has the pro showed up this week? No? Then start answering those emails and reaching out to clients. Like, you are a full-fledged business. You can take yourself seriously as a business when you're a freelancer, no matter if you're just starting or you've been in this for 2 decades. And don't let your anxiety drive the boat. You can do this. Stay grounded. You can drive your boat.
Mike, what you got?
Totally let your anxiety drive the boat. It will keep you moving forward. It is your your quadruple cappuccino. I would say do take time off. And this is coming from a guy who never takes time off because I'm terrified that as soon as I do, they will find somebody younger, smarter, and cheaper. But do find ways to take your time off, and like Stephen did. That's a perfect way to do it. My entire business is a laptop. I don't need to lug gear around, so I can work remotely. I just kind of suck at it because I get distracted too easily. But do take the time for yourself. And in winter, I take off 1 day a week to ski. I tell my clients ahead of time that it's in the winter, I take a day off a week to ski. And then the other thing is, this is just to repeat something. This isn't like silver bullet wisdom that hasn't been said. It's be a teammate, be a collaborator, be a partner. And that's how you'll build your network. And that's, why people will recommend you. Be a reliable, engaged, collaborative teammate. And an advocate for whatever brand you're working for. Just like you work in-house. Wear your brand's trucker hat. That's
Gabacha.
it.
I'm just going to reiterate something that I dropped in the chat earlier today, which is, if you don't make your terms, you're going to be on their terms. If you're freelancing to be your own boss, but you don't have a terms of service that everybody has to agree to when they sign contracts with you, you're probably going to end up with piecemeal, like, content, asset gathering from your client. It's going to be a nightmare. You're going to spend more time educating, wrangling your client than you're going to spend on actually doing the work. So this is something that I find very valuable. On top of my contract, I have a terms of service Google Doc that I kind of just share with people and try to keep updated. But at least when they're signing my contract, they have to check the mark that they agree to the terms of service, that they agree to use the tools that I'm going to provide and tell them about, because otherwise I just know that I cannot do my work in a healthy way. And I hope that you take that and think about what those terms are for you, how you want your clients to relate with you, because you are your own boss. And that's the whole point of this.
All right. So that was excellent. Thank you so much to our panelists. Sorry, we went a little bit over time, but there was too much wisdom happening to cut it short. Allie, do you want to say goodbye, or is Goldie maybe sleep? Okay. All right. So we'll cut it off here. We will send out a link to the YouTube as well, just in case you want to rewatch. And we look forward to seeing everyone again. Yeah, have a great night, and thanks for tuning in to Basecamp's conversation.
Thank you so much, Jen and Allie, for having this.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for coming.